about how libraries choose books, what writers need to know. And next month, I think there's a bit of a continuation. It's what are we reading these days? Which of course is partly determined by what libraries and bookstores stock. We have some nice materials over here. If you're not a member of Friends of Hannon Library, we encourage you to join. Your last chance before dues go up a little bit this spring. And there's some other material here too. We have the Raider and invitation to softball. So, hey, it's a pretty good softball team, right? Right. Yeah. It's our custom at this point to read the Southern Oregon University land acknowledgement, so I will do that now. We want to take this moment to acknowledge that the Southern Oregon University is located within the ancestral homelands of the Shasta, Takelma, and Watgawa peoples, who've lived here since time immemorial. These tribes were displaced during rapid Euro-American colonization, the gold rush, and armed conflict between 1851 and 1856. In the 1850s, discovery of gold and settlement brought thousands of Euro-Americans to these lands, leading to warfare, epidemics, starvation, and villages being burned. In 1853, the first of several treaties were signed, confederating these tribes and others together, who would then be referred to as the Rogue River Tribe. These treaties ceded most of their homelands to the United States, and in return, they were guaranteed a permanent homeland reserved for them. At the end of the Rogue River Wars, though, in 1856, these tribes and many other tribes from Western Oregon were removed to the Siletz Reservation and the Grand Ronde Reservation. Today, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians are living descendants of the Takelma, Shasta, and Watgawa peoples of this area. We encourage you to learn more about the land you reside on and join us in advocating for the inherent sovereignty of Indigenous people. So with that, very quick introduction to today's event. It's a panel discussion, and as I mentioned, it's about how libraries decide to acquire books, and maybe other materials will come into play here too. And our panel today is moderated by Brystan Strong, who is Vice President of the Board. I should say, I'm President of the Board of Friends of Hannon Library. I forgot to say that. Brystan has prepared some questions and topics for discussion, and she will take it from here and introduce herself and the panelists. Thank you very much.
First, I'm going to make sure you do.
Nope.
Nope. Sure can. Top one. Oh, yes. What about now?
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, great. I'm a small person. I'll try not to use a small voice today. Like it was said, my name is Brystan Strong. I'm the Vice President of Friends of the Hannon Library Board. I'm also the Programs Coordinator for Jackson County Library Services. And I'm just going to pass the mic down so our panelists can introduce themselves. And then I'm going to get the microphone back and ask me questions. My panelists are more than welcome to answer all or any or some or hopefully not none of these questions. You know, and if it makes you think of something else, feel free. Like this is kind of a discussion. And then as time allows, we will open it up at the end for any audience questions. Sound great? Great.
Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Isser. I'm the new co-owner of Bloomsbury Books as of April of 2025, along with my husband, Dave. We divide and conquer in a lot of ways, and he's home with our daughters so that I could be here today. Otherwise, we'd be here together. But Bloomsbury Books has been around for 45 years. So I am definitely new, but honored to be here and happy to chat about this topic.
Hi everyone, my name is Laurin Arnold. I'm the Collection Development Manager at Jackson County Library Services. My position and our department has been around for a little over 3 years now. And yeah, we handle the management of the collection as a whole, including selection.
Hi, I'm Emily Miller-Francisco, and I am the Interim Dean of the Hannon Library here. But I'm also the collection development librarian, so that is the role I'm here on the panel for. Do all of our, or I oversee all of our purchasing books and periodicals and electronic resources.
Okay, so our first question is, how does your library's mission or your community profile or your business's mission influence your book choices? You don't have to go in order.
Yeah, so I think our mission is pretty core to how we go about purchasing, because our main role is to support the curriculum for our students. And so most of our purchasing is about that. We do want to also preserve the some of the region type things. So we will purchase things that are not necessarily about the curriculum, but more about the region. But that's a minority of what we do. There's a lot of overlap because there's a lot of curriculum in support of like the bioregion, and so we do a lot of purchasing there.
Our selection decisions are mostly driven by our collection development policy, which was set by the board. If you go to our website, jcls.org, about us and policies, you can find it. And it basically lists everything that we take into consideration when we select. So, of course, our mission, our vision, what our community is interested in, meeting educational, but also recreational needs. All of those things are pretty much laid out in our policy, and we follow that pretty closely. As opposed to other parts of how our collection is managed as well.
Yeah, so at Bloomsbury Books, I mean, it's obviously a different model, but we look at ourselves as serving our community and being a place of connection and storytelling. And so we follow the trends, but we also follow what's happening locally, what our community is asking for, what our staff is reading. So it's a balance between what's going on in the zeitgeist and what matters to our community.
That touches a little bit on my second question, so feel free to expand on that. But my second question is, how do you learn about emerging needs or opportunities or gaps even within your collections?
Well, I'll just start. For us, we have to balance the classics with what's hot, with our local authors. So there's a lot of input coming in. We really rely on our staff. We have an incredible staff with very diverse interests. And I talk to them every day about what they're reading and what's going on. We talk to our customers, and then I follow, independent bookstore websites, and I just do a ton of reading myself and just try to filter in what really is rising to the top for us and what matters.
For us, we have, there's like internal inputs and external inputs. So internal, we have an integrated library system in ILS. That's what's used to check out the books and everything. That's our catalog, basically. And from that, we get statistics. So we can see what actually is circulating, where it's circulating. If we can notice trends where things are starting to see more and more that certain genres or certain subjects are starting to become popular, so they're popping up a little more here and there, and so maybe we'll start purchasing a little bit more in those areas, or we're seeing, Laura Roberts' popularity is actually starting to wane a little bit. We also keep track of that sort of thing. And we also inputs from staff who let us know, hey, this is what we're noticing from our patrons. These are the subjects that people are interested in. And then in terms of external, we do get purchase suggestions from our patrons. I mean, we'll go into that later, but requesting that we purchase certain items, but also letting us know if if there's a hole in a series or that sort of thing. And we're also paying attention to Purchase Weekly and Library Journal, and we're watching webinars, and we're just living our lives. And so when I'm listening to podcasts, as soon as I hear something like, oh no, So I take a screenshot and email it to myself. It's like, oh, do we have this? Chances are our adult selection librarian Felicia has it in a cart somewhere. But we'll like recommend to each other, oh, hey, this came up. It's something we might want as well.
Yeah, and I think our approach actually overlaps quite a bit. We also pay attention to usage statistics and keep track of like where the activity is and how that changes over time. All of our librarians are teaching librarians, and so we're in classrooms and also helping students with their research. So we get a lot of input that way. We can actually see what the students want and need, and that changes over time. We also have a librarian who sits on the curriculum committee, and so we are aware of changes in curriculum. So when new programs are being proposed, we're aware of that. We actually do a collection assessment so that we're looking at our collection to see if we can support new programs. So that's sort of the internal piece, being aware of needs. And then externally, we're like you, also following a lot of reviews. We use choice reviews, which is more academically focused, but we also use others. And each librarian has purchasing responsibilities, and they all have different styles about how they approach that. But I also like to do screenshots of things that I think, oh, we should get this. And just paying attention to what is out there and what has buzz. But are academically and academically appropriate and supportive. So, yeah.
Just real quick, I will add, we do things like keep an eye on like what Bloomsbury is doing and other libraries are doing. It's like, ooh, so they're talking about this. They're having this upcoming author and this upcoming program. We do pay attention to that as well. Should we text each other screenshot?
So what role do patron or customer requests or local trends play in your selections? And I think we all kind of have an idea, but we'd like to just explain a little bit.
Huge. I mean, special orders for us is a big source of our ordering. And so if we start to, for instance, the other day I got this, or not the other day, a few weeks ago, I got a call from someone who's kind of in a whisper tone, like, do you sell heated rivalry? And I was like, and I'm looking it up and we didn't have it. And I guess I missed that when it was first really hot. And then I got another call and I ordered it for that customer and another call. And then I was like, okay. So sometimes these things come out in ways that are really from our customers, and I need to pay attention to those patterns if they're not coming my way just in everyday life. So yeah, it's a huge source of how we purchase. It's based on our customers' repeated requests.
Yeah, I'll just second that as well, especially if we get a lot of requests for the same title or genre. Then we definitely go, okay, we need to look into getting this. Otherwise, it really depends on what people are asking for. So I do want to, if it's okay, take a slight switch into just mentioning that there are some things that are important to us that we need to keep in mind when we're evaluating whether to get something that a patron has requested. And that includes things like the format it's in. So spiral bound. It's very rare for us to get those. Like we've had actually some very hyper local things that we've gotten that are spiral bound because we just know the demand's there, but otherwise we tend to avoid that because it's not great for circulating in a library. We don't get workbooks because those are meant to be written in and you're not supposed to write in library books. But we also pay attention to the fact that, you know, we get all our books through vendors who actually process materials for us. So they create the catalog record, which is amazingly time consuming if you want to do it right. And we want to do it right so that you can find things. And then they like put the barcodes, put the stickers, if it has the dust jacket, they do all that work for us. And we can't get it through our vendors. For AV materials, we have Midwest tapes. And for books, we have Bronard. So we fortunately weren't impacted by Baker and Taylor disintegrating basically recently. But if we can't get it through them, then it's actually a lot of work on our technical services staff to actually get that added to the collection. It can take months, like up to 6 months, just to get all of that together. And so that does play a huge role as well for us. So if something would require us to go outside of our vendors, we'd have to really see, okay, we really think that the demand is there to get that. But local history, local topics are incredibly popular. And so that is one area where we will go, okay, so I guess we're just going to try to process this the best we can and get those in. If we can't get it through our vendor because we just know the demand is there.
Yeah, most of our purchasing doesn't come from patron requests, but we do on our like faculty requests we're more likely to do those. I mean, as long as they are in the curriculum. I've also had faculty who wanted to get the latest mystery, and then well, maybe not that, because they have other options. And then student requests will probably weigh those if we feel like they're not the only student who's going to want that. We'll probably get it. Outside of that, we generally don't follow those requests unless it is like clearly something that's going to be useful. But I do look at I look at the statistics of what we ask for as a community outside of our library, and if we keep asking for the same thing from our consortium, then I think, oh, maybe we should have our own copy of that, and so I'll go ahead and get those. Yeah. But mostly we're doing looking at reviews and choosing direction.
You mentioned choosing from reviews, and so I want to know, how do you decide which reviewers, which publications or other sources to trust for your collection recommendations?
Well, one handy resource we have as bookstore buyers is Edelweiss, which is our platform. It's basically our online catalog. And I've been learning the best practices for how to review on Edelweiss, and it's really civilized and informed, and it respects the fact that authors spend a lot of time on these books, and to just tear it apart in a review is not helpful. So Edelweiss is a great source for us. And then I have my favorite podcast hosts like Ezra Klein and, the New York Times Book Review. And yeah, those are my main sources.
Yeah, for us, we have a weekly library journal, school library journal, book list, book page, which our friends, our foundation kindly provides in each of our branches as well. But also, yeah, like the local news. So actually news page, we hear about things and the Rogue Pennant and all sorts of any local newspapers. You can take that into account as well. There's definitely trusted names that have just been around for a long time, but even those you sort of keep. You take with a grain of salt. You sort of read between the lines a little bit to like, Sometimes they'll say like, oh yeah, best for this very specific type of library, and you're like, okay, maybe not meant for us. But yeah, but also yes, definitely podcasts and emails from. We do receive emails from vendors and whatnot, and those also you take with a grain of salt because they're obviously trying to sell to you, but sometimes. Okay, this is a subject that's super popular, talk your romance, then maybe you pay a little more attention.
Yeah, I think we get Choice Online, which is out of an association for academic libraries, and that is probably our main go-to, but we also use other reviews. We used to use Carcass, but we don't get that anymore, but library journals, sometimes we look at that. I also like New York Times, the book review, and so I think that's nice. I think there's a couple other librarians who are using that. I also just get them in random places. There's just The Week. I don't know if anybody knows that publication. It's sort of a summary publication that comes out each week, and they always have some book reviews, and I think that's a good place to see things that are just more popular, not super academic, but on the more popular side. And then you were talking about Edelweiss. We use something called Gobi, which is our book purchasing platform, and it doesn't give you reviews, but it does let you search like, okay, I'm looking for things in counseling, and I want them to be, they have profile levels, so they're basically vetted, that they have a team of librarians that are vetting things. And so that these are like the essential things that you really should purchase. These are things that are, you know, recommended, but not absolutely essential. And then these are like, you know, if you've got lots of money, go help. So I might just, you know, choose the essential things and for a topic and purchase the ones that look like they're actually meeting the needs of our students.
It's going to become a theme. I think of something as soon as y'all speak. Yeah, our vendors are great because they do create those sorts of lists. They have librarians who are actively putting together lists based off of themes. They're, you know, and of course, award winners, that sort of thing. So that's really helpful. And since we have Libby, we can use those lists as well, which is really helpful.
How do you navigate the tension between meeting current demand, so all those hockey romance books, and also building a rich, varied collection of selection of materials?
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's interesting because that's kind of a question that's very different in an academic library versus a more public serving institution. So, I mean, for us, I think it just naturally occurs. You know, we have a bunch of librarians and they each have a bunch of accounts. And so they're all buying purchasing items that are for specific programs. And since we're all doing that, it just sort of naturally spreads out a little bit. And I think, you know, when I purchase from my areas, I'm thinking, you know, okay, I'm going to see students who are interested in these types of topics. And so I'm going to be buying a variety of things to reflect that. So I think it just sort of happens naturally. And then over time, you can kind of watch things come and go. And we keep all those books and they build up quite a breadth. And we also lean pretty heavily on our consortium. So for the things that we don't get, then we also have all the big public universities in Washington and Oregon, and also a lot of privates for sharing books. And so we can also get books from them as well. So together we make a very good breadth. But that's, you know, that's a very academic approach to that.
Which makes sense.
Yes.
For a public library, for us, it's that collection development policy. So in there, our scope of our collection, we focus on current popular materials, focusing also on enduring works and local history. I misquoted that slightly, but that's basically right from our collection development policy. So we do our best to find that good balance because it's important to us that we're meeting information needs. So like currently we're doing a nonfiction refresh because we saw the need based off of visits to our branches. Like, oh, our nonfiction collection is getting old. We need to get some newer materials. And these may not, you know, circulate as much as our fiction or our graphic novels, but it's still important for us to have these materials because we still meet that information need. And so we go into that when we're looking at the nonfiction collection in general management and like how much space it's given and things. So we give it more leeway than we would other collections. But also, I just went sideways. But we're also thinking about, like, we want folks to love reading. And that's really important to us, is to have something for everyone, you know, regardless of your views or the type of material you like to read. And so, yeah, we are going to get, you know, the hockey romance, we're going to get the manga, we're going to get, you know, our video game collection, we're going to, which, well, there is reading involved in video games, but I select for that collection, so I'm a little biased there, but it's also the graphic novel, so very biased there. But we want folks to love reading, and so finding just a variety of things that are just fun, it's important to us too, you know, and the early literacy and getting kids interested in reading too.
When Dave and I were researching just the book selling industry, and we were on a listening tour, just talking to as many people as we could, and we spoke to this one very very helpful bookstore owner in the Bay Area, and she had a very small, different, Bloomsbury's pretty big for an independent bookstore, and this was a small one. And she said, you got to look at books as they pay the rent. Each book pays the rent. And I wouldn't put anything in here that I can't get behind, that I wouldn't want to read. And we were like, wow. And I use that, but I also realize in Bloomsbury, there are certain books that pay the rent, but then there are certain books that feed the soul. And there are certain books that are gateways into reading, and they may not pay the rent, but they increase interest in storytelling and literacy. And just to see a book on the shelf that you connect with, you may not buy it, but then you may mosey on down the aisle and buy the book that does pay the rent. So it's really balancing those two things for us.
You talked a lot about how you add books to your collection. So I'm going to switch topics a little bit and ask you to describe the criteria you use to weed or remove books from your shelves.
Yeah, I mean, we luckily we have 45 years worth of data on Bloomsbury, history. And so we can look at the sales records of things, and we have certain metrics. They change based on category, because there are certain history books that, yes, it's been there for 15 years and maybe we've sold 20 copies, but it still belongs there, even after 15 years. But if a book hasn't sold in a year, we will really look at it and think about, making room for something else, because we can't keep everything. But then there's also, shipping is so expensive. So to return books, it's a whole game. So really it starts with the ordering. I'm realizing that you kind of have to set yourself up for success as much as possible. That being said, we don't have crystal balls. So we always need to weed things out at some point.
Definitely. Yeah, I always say the laws of physics still apply. We only have so much room. We don't have pocket dimensions. And so we do, in order, we pull in about 60,000 items every year, as in we purchase 60,000 and they need to go somewhere. And so we need to remove items from the shelves in order to make room for that one. Because our collection circulates among the public, an easy way to weed is to look at condition. So when things become damaged, weird brown stains that you really should not be smelling. And it's really unfortunate, but newer books are not being bound well. They're not being printed physically very well. And so they don't last as long as they should. And so, we have to get rid of them maybe a little earlier than we thought we would, because they're physically falling apart. So that's one thing. But also, is there demand? Certainly, as it's something that's circulating. But, we try to move things. We're lucky we have 15 branches. That means we can move things around and see if something will do better elsewhere. And sometimes it won't. Sometimes we get it wrong. This, making those decisions up front, it's important. And we don't have that crystal ball. Maybe we buy too many copies and the demand doesn't meet how many copies we have. So that plays a role. And we usually try to use data a lot when we're making those sorts of decisions, like when was it purchased, how many times is it circulated, how often does it circulate, that sort of thing, and understand any item within the context of its collection. So a picture books check out like crazy. People love picture books. You check out a whole giant stack because you go through them pretty quickly. Same thing with like a DVD or a graphic novel usually. And so we expect those maybe to circulate a little bit more than we would a nonfiction book. In nonfiction in particular, we're paying attention to things like, in terms of how old it is it still relevant? Is the data, is the information actually still accurate and relevant? That's really important with nonfiction, especially for an academic library, I'm sure. But also thinking about, is it just something that it doesn't circulate as much, but it's something we need to have on the shelf, so we give it a little more. But all of our criteria are in our collection development policy.
Yeah. So yeah, in our context, weeding is also important. We're less concerned about space. We're lucky that way. When we redid this building, we were able to add enough space that we could keep adding books, but the browsability is an issue. So if if a student comes and they're wanting to do research in, I don't know, criminology or something, and they look and they see all these books that appear to them like they're from the 60s, they're thinking, I don't think I'm going to be able to find what I need here. And even if it's like they're just spaced out, they don't find that a very good experience. So that's a big challenge because it takes a lot of time and work to take things back out. And I have found that I've been doing targeted reading projects, and I just look for books that haven't been checked out in and that actually can keep us safe. So that's where I'm starting, and I haven't gotten to the next step because there's a lot of that to do still. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned browsability. I think that's where bookstores really lead the way, because creating this environment where you're like, ooh, that's really cool, I want to grab it and face out. So those are things that libraries do a lot now, and we got it from bookstores, yes, which is pretty amazing.
So what concerns do you have about your collections representing diverse perspectives and voices, and what steps do you take to achieve that?
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, which is a very diverse place. It just inherently, breeds diversity, and Ashland struggles with that. And that is challenging, and it's, we don't want our shelves to necessarily reflect that. So we try to display what we want people to expose themselves to, even though they may not know it or see them in the community as much as we wish they did. So it's a balance between, really just convincing people that they should be reading things that they may not be thinking about, but also being realistic with, where we are. Luckily, Ashland is such a unique place in that it's a very curious community, a very open-minded and generally progressive. So there is a love, I hope, and I see every day, a love of diverse viewpoints. And so we try to tap into that and celebrate it as much as possible.
Yeah, that's definitely the sort of the cornerstone of something that's important to us in the public libraries and at JCLS in particular. It's mentioned in our collection policy. Yeah, and it's in a variety of ways too, from voices to perspectives, and you'd be surprised how much of a connection there is between the folks who check out books from the Hannon Library and say the Royal River Library. They all are interested in a lot of the same things, actually. Because being in Jackson County, we have such a wide variety of perspectives and interests, and there's a lot where that overlaps. But we try to have a variety, certainly, and we also pay attention to our making sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. Our community has a sizable Hispanic population, and so making sure we're finding books that are written by Hispanic authors, and we're revamping our Spanish collection so that it's more responsive and more and actually give interest to folks who speak Spanish. And the way I always view it is, we're introducing new staff. I always say, there's something in this library that's going to offend you. And that's the point. Because we are firm believers in intellectual freedom. No one has the right to tell you what you check out. No one has the right. You don't have the right to tell me what to check out. And so we want to provide as many perspectives as possible, because that's sort of the core value of a public library.
Yeah, we take diverse perspectives very seriously, and so we actually ask all of our librarians to purchase with that in mind for all of their areas. I can do that. We also have some programs on campus that are representing diverse perspectives. So we have gender studies and women's studies. I'm doing it wrong. GSWS. Okay, so gender, sexuality, and women's studies. I purchased for that. We also have some others like that where just to support the program, you're going to be bringing in some perspectives. We also have, some of you may have seen it, a multicultural nook. It's the fireplace on the school. And so I purchased for that, and that has its own fun. So trying to, the goal of that area is to make a welcoming space for people of all kinds of different identities to be able to sit and just feel like they belong here. Yeah, we've been doing that kind of work, and we feel like it's really important for people to be exposed to a full range of perspectives to do their studies, to think about different things. So
my next question is a juicy one. Have you dealt with controversies arising from any materials in your collections, and how did that play out?
I'm sure that my staff has stories. I'll think about if I can recall any. Yeah. Of course.
Yes, we do. So folks will express concerns about what we have at the desk. They'll bring up a book, why do you have this item? And it's from a variety of perspectives. Or that we do have a formal request for reconsideration process that people can go to, where they request that something be removed because it doesn't meet our collection development policy. And I've had a handful of those since I've been in this position the past 3 years, and it's for a variety of reasons, depending on where the person's coming from the cover to the sexual identity, but also to more conservative values, to the amount of cuss words. We've had a variety of those sorts of requests. Most of the time it's very informal, but sometimes they do go through the formal process.
yeah, that is one of the nice things of being in an academic library, because I think it's more expected that there's a range of material. And so although we do have policies to deal with that, we haven't usually had to go there. We haven't had to apply them. There are some things that come up that are like, less, not people challenging things out loud, but like maybe a little vandalism. We've had, things like that occur, but not anything formal.
I'm definitely recalling similar issues so that we've dealt with. They're few and far between, fortunately, but I will say the biggest point of contention are category names. And that instead of psychology, that should be philosophy. And I mean, people have very strong opinions about categories.
You've all touched on this a little bit, and we're getting close to the end of my questions, so folks, get your questions ready. How do local or regional perspectives shape your collection development priorities?
Okay, so you wanted to know about local,
Regional perspectives and how that shapes your collection development priorities.
okay. Yeah, so I actually have a fund set aside for local perspectives. And so yeah, we do take preserving the local character seriously. We think that's part of our mission in addition to the academic piece. A lot of that falls under our special collections folks. But like I'll look and see, occasionally books are published about Ashland, and I definitely want those. I definitely want anything about the bioregion. It's even better if they're like more on the academic side of things, but we do want to keep those types of things. That I don't like local authors that occasionally I'll collect those, but that's a little harder just because that could be author. We have a lot of local writers, and we're very excited about that. But if they're not going to be used in the studies, we're probably not going to do those. But just trying to think of the other kinds of things that we might purchase. But Yeah, there's a lot of local presses that I do. Like I'll go to Oregon State University, like because they're Oregon, and see what they have. And I kind of think of the Pacific Northwest. I try to get books that are reflecting things here.
I have selected, so I've worked in a couple of different library systems, one in Columbus, Ohio, a system in rural Colorado, and then here. And there are a lot of similarities in terms of the items that I purchased. The Diary of a Kid is available, is beloved across the board. There's certain authors that are beloved across the board. But no, definitely each area, each community has its own preferences, and definitely take that into consideration. There are some titles I wasn't actively purchasing, but I was asking for materials in Columbus and for that particular neighborhood to be like, yeah, no, these are the ones that I know are folks like. And you can do that here with one of the individual branches. There are some themes, homesteading across the board. Not as much in Columbus, but in rural Colorado and in Jackson County, pretty popular, and all the different branches. So we definitely take that into consideration, whether the community, sort of a community-centered collection development idea, and so.
And we have some guardrails around our local author selection. I mean, it's really such a heart and soul of our bookstore. I mean, when you think about just all the local authors in this room, and then some of the bigger ones like Nathan Harris, and now Amy Cordalis Bauer's book. And so we really value our local authors. Our guardrails are really, you have to live, except for Nathan Harris, who lives in Chicago, you have to live in the Rogue Valley. Because we just noticed if you're from even the Bay Area or Portland, your book probably isn't going to sell here. It's about your community coming in and finding your book. And we don't want your book to just sit there for, nobody's going to win. So you have to be in the Rogue Valley. And if it doesn't sell after a year, we do make phone calls and say, can you come pick up your book? But I do know other independent bookstores have even stronger policies around it, like you can't have your book available on Amazon, which I respect, but I also know how hard it is for local authors to get their books out there. So I want to, not too strict on that. And then having like a spine with a title on the spine is very important. And I can see that too, but I also get a lot of local authors who don't have that. So yeah, we try to take a lot into account.
So my final question is, how do you evaluate self-published works?
Well, our adult selection librarian gave me a lovely list of things to consider, that she considers. She's our adult selection librarian. But also it's something that we consider across the board. So if it's self-published and it's not available for vendors, that automatically makes it a little harder because that process isn't being done. It requires original catalog, which takes a long time. But the things that physically that are important are an appealing cover, can be simple, it doesn't have to be busy, title on the cover and on the spine, accessible and easy to read fonts on the cover and inside. Don't have loose pages with things to be added in afterwards. Ideally standard sizes for like a picture book or something. Actually, hardback is not quite right, but a paperback. We try to avoid those as much as possible. We do get those, but they just don't come up as much, and they're harder to find on the shelf. Certainly things like spiral bound and I mentioned, the formatting, things like workbooks, pop-ups. We don't really get those as well, or additional loose things. Those don't really work for us either. And also, we do get requests for books that are actually like really highly of a high cost, and depending on the collection, like, we're used to having paperbacks costing between 10 and 20, hardbacks 15 and 30. So if we're talking about a $75 book, for a couple of reasons, we probably don't want to get that. For one, because, we have budgets and they're pretty set, and that's, that limits how much we get total. But also, if someone loses or damages a book, that means they have to pay for it. And that's the thing we keep in mind too, is that we don't necessarily want to have super expensive books on our shelves. We want books, because things happen, life happens. And so ideally, if someone couldn't afford to pay back, the damage to this book, but if it's a $100 book, it's a little harder for them. So.
Yeah, in our context, we very rarely take in self-published books. We generally are wanting things that are published at university presses, or we do have a fiction section, so like we might get the bigger presses for that. But the self-published, unless it's like really targeted, like I did accept one that was about SOU. Like their football team. But generally, too many.
Just quickly, so according to our collection development policy, we do accept donations from local authors, and we do say donation local is you have or are currently living in Jackson County, so that is a boundary for us. It's Jackson County. In terms of the actual content that will increase appeal, it's like, is it actually about local, like you said, like about it's taking place in Ashland, or it's about a local history topic. That can increase that appeal as well. But we do accept donations because they are processed by services staff. They can take 6 months or more before it actually ends up on the shelves. And you'll want to actually contact one of us first, and I can show you part of everything before donating it. But one thing that you may or may not have thought of, our digital selection librarian, when we mentioned that she actually likes getting some local self-published authors. So if we publish through, say, Ingram, there's a good chance it shows up in Hoopla. Because they gather a lot of things through Ingram Spark, in which case, hey, it's part of the collection now. Also, digital books cost way more than you might think, hundreds of dollars for a single copy, or you only get 20 checkouts in a 2-year period, and then when you're done, you have to pay $100 again. But self-published titles are usually cheaper and it's local. Then it goes like, yeah, I'm interested in hearing about that. You do need to be careful about exclusivity. So there are some things like the house book, the housemaid. That is, I think there's going to be a movie or a TV show coming out about that soon. We can't get that. It's exclusive rights, so it's tied up, and it's on Audible. Chances are we can't get that there. So be careful when you are thinking about that aspect. But if you can get it into movie, you can get it into art, then there's a good chance we can offer digital.
Yeah, and we're pretty liberal with the kinds of books we'll take as far as cover. I mean, again, obviously having a spine helps, but I haven't turned away somebody who doesn't have a spine. But if it's falling apart, we'll save something. Otherwise, we will take most local authors' books as long as they're local. And we can get a hold of them so that we can send them checks and next.
That was all of my questions. Just a million audience question.
It's just sort of riding on you anticipated a part of my question. I'm just wondering, with all of this, do you see a difference in the volume of collections you get in terms of competing with ebooks and audio books? Do you see a difference in terms of the trend? Are lots of people still wanting hardbacks and paperbacks, in your opinion?
The book is here to stay. I firmly believe that. And I think people like of all ages, so many kids love reading physical books. But I really don't think they're going away. See, I know that because they've been saying that to me for decades now. And it's all going to be digital, and obviously that hasn't happened. But I will say that our digital circulation has just continued to increase year after year after year. We've been part of our library consortium for 20 years. It just every year it just continues to increase, and especially the audiobooks. Folks love the audiobooks. It's great. I had someone the other day, she's telling me about she's in her 70s, but so it's hard for her to actually physically hold books in her room. But she also loves listening to audiobooks because then she can, be doing chores and listening to it. And that's how I come to listen to audiobooks. I'm doing other things and I'm listening. So certainly there are some trends that way. There are some systems out there where they see more digital circulation than they do physical. But these are like huge systems, like San Francisco Public Library, where this is happening. But I firmly believe books are here to stay. It's just a matter of finding the balance. And that's also why it's important to find the right titles that really appeal to our community.
Yeah, so probably the biggest portion of our, not probably, definitely, the biggest portion of our budget goes to journals, actually. That's really what students are using for most of their research. But in terms of books, I still find for our purposes, we get much better value on print books. And so we should generally still want to buy print books. And the students seem to be fine with that. But we are getting more and more ebooks because of our consortium. There's centrally purchased packages of ebooks, and then we all share. So that's been really great because it gives us access to books we didn't normally have. And we do want to, we are trying to buy more ebooks that are being used in the classroom, because then that way multiple students can use that, and that helps impact potential affordability for them. And so that's been a project that we've been working on for the past few years. But just in terms of regular book purchasing, sometimes we'll buy ebooks, but they do tend to be more expensive than the print version. And so that's not a great, that's usually not a great thing for us, so we still buy.
And just related, sometimes depending on the subject matter, especially for nonfiction, it may make sense to actually go digital versus physical. If it's something where it's just the information is just constantly updating, they're just like state books or things like that for kids. Having the physical book, that's 10 years old, it may not make as much sense as having like a digital version that you can check out in Libby.
I agree, books are here to stay. And I try not to come from a place of fear, because we have survived rounds of threats, and as bookstores and libraries, and we're here. But I will say, there's a partnership happening too with bookshop.org, where you can purchase e-readers and books, and you can select an independent bookstore of your choice, like Bloomsbury or wherever, and we get a portion of that sale, which is great. And then there's also libro.fm, different from Libby, which is also wonderful. But libro.fm is a source for audiobooks if you don't want to go to Audible, and you can select an independent bookstore and we'll get a percentage of that. So we're just trying to partner and not, pretend like it's not there, because it is, and we're still here, and books are too.
Is there time for another question? Yeah. So we've heard a lot about how you're influenced in terms of adding to your collection. So I'm curious, going back to kind of the browsability question, how do you influence readers besides turning some books out so we can see the covers? Or are there other ways that you're trying to influence readership?
Well, we love our staff pick shelves. Each staff person has their own shelf, and we have, internal competitions going on of whose books get selected most. And we also love writing shelf talkers. We have handwritten reviews around that we find really helps. Our display windows. We're playing around. It's these fun A/B experiments every day where if we just move that book over there and it sells the next day, it's like ding. So it's constant experimenting and but staff picks I think are huge and hand selling. If you're passionate about a book and that customer feels it, it's such a great connection. Yeah.
All of that. Plus making sure that, books are areas where it just grabs your eyes. So where we have our displayers, where we have books face out seems to be key. Also having really vibrant and active new areas, because I don't know about y'all, but I personally, sometimes I just want a small collection to browse through, something that's like a nice little mishmash of all the different areas, and the new area is great for that as well. So like these are the new ones. And then, it's how it's displays, and then like maybe the way things are laid out. So it's like, you put certain things in the checkout counter. So we have a display here on the circulation counter, and hand sewing and staff picks. Always popular.
Yeah, we've actually done a little bit of the trying to recommend books, but we haven't been doing that recently. And then we do display cases on a particular topic, trying to get people excited about things. And then I like to put them we have research guides online for all the different topics. So I like to share with the students, hey, are you in psychology? Well, these are the books I bought last year. I don't give them every single one, but just give them a taste to, there's lots of cool stuff. Come check it out. So that's, I think, the big ones that we do. Yeah.
I actually also have an answer to this question. So I'm going to put my programs coordinator hat on. I'm one of those librarians that doesn't do what traditional librarians do. I don't deal with books. I deal with programs and events. And so, but even so, my role is to still tie what we do at the public library with our collection. And so I take it very seriously. And so when I see programs happening, I encourage our staff to put book displays related on that topic. So we partnered with Webster's, a local shop here in Ashland, and they did some crochet classes for us at several of our branches over the course of the winter. And so I encouraged our libraries to put crochet books out, knitting books out, and really any fiber arts, anything that's kind of related, just because people are there for that interest, and then hopefully they'll check out a book too. So that's how, from the program side of it, we do that.
And also, it's really great to combine ages and combine collections, like our library of things. It's fun to do. So like maybe which I attended one of those and had a lot of fun. Yeah. That was a lot of fun. So if there's any more, you should totally attend. Make your own little octopus. But we have a yarn, a swim, a yarn winder, and so, or we have like crochet books, and so buying those together can be fun as well.
Someone has a quick question. We can squeeze in one more and wrap it up. If not, thank you, Brystan. Thank you, Megan and Laurin and Emily. Nice discussion, and appreciate you all organizing and participating in it.